All right, gang. Welcome to this year's iteration of the Due Diligence Bootcamp. This bootcamp is different from what we've done in the past. In the past, it was more of a basic program, but now it is actually intended to be a bootcamp for due diligence, so that if you get into the finals of Angel NV, which is going to start in January, finish on March 28th, then you will be better prepared to meet the demands of due diligence. So we've got 6 sessions. The last session is office hours to help you with the application. And it's not mandatory, it's optional. And today, the first session is just on me, and it's a review of TAM SAM SOM, one of the most important slides in your deck. And it's really easy to lose credibility if you don't do it right. And it's easy to gain credibility if you do. And then we're also going to cover pitch text 101. So it's a lot of talking on my part, and I'm sorry about that. But feel free to interrupt me at any time with questions, because I'm the only one here, and nobody's watching chat. So just go ahead and interrupt me. And how's the view on this? Today it looks like the camera's way over there. How is it? Okay. Nobody's saying anything. Let's see if this works. It does. Okay. So again, we're starting off with TAM SAM SOM, which is a way to talk about the market opportunity. So we had Startup Week last week, and Jeff Ralston was our special guest, keynote speaker on our last evening together. And he spent some time talking to a founder, and I was there. And so the guy has solar panels for concrete pavers. So he started off as an on-the-roof solar guy, and then he switched over to putting it into pavers, which he thought would be different and kind of more interesting, and it gets beat down upon a lot, like a roof does. But a lot of people have more hardscape around their home than they actually have footprint on their roof. So it also works well in plazas and in office buildings, so they can put it out there in front of their building, whereas the roofs of a lot of office buildings have air conditioning units. They have a lot of things that can't have solar panels put on them, so it limits the size of the amount of solar panels that one can put on a roof of an office. So he was talking about his product, and Jeff asked him, "What's your market?" And the answer that the founder gave did not answer what Jeff was asking. Jeff was trying to understand who is the first market and how big is it. So if you decide your first market are office buildings and plazas, then you're selling to governments for the plazas in those cases, and then you're selling to individual building owners in the other case. And so Jeff wanted to pull that out of him with that question, what's your market? But he didn't quite answer it. So that's why I say if your TAM SAM SOM is good, you can gain credibility because the investor knows that you know your market. Any questions so far? I feel like this might be repetitive for some of you, and so I apologize, but it is a good way to get started if you guys haven't heard this before. Oh, I should go back and talk about TAM SAM SOM. So TAM is the total addressable market. So that is the whole large market in which you're going to play and try to gain market share. Okay, so if it's transportation, that could be all of transportation. And we'll talk about that when we get to the Uber example. They use transportation as their market, but really they were just starting off doing limo taxi service. So that was where they came to with the SAM, the service available market. So in many cases, TAM will be a worldwide researched number of what the current spend is. And then SAM will be a smaller subset of that larger number that has to do with your first market or drawing down into what your actual market is, as an example of Uber being transportation, but really taxi Ubers. So that's the addressable market. And then SOM, that is your obtainable market. And there's so much information on pitch decks and not as much information on TAM SAM SOM. But SOM should be a projection of your revenue for a time-bound period. So it can be 3 years or 5 years, depends on how far into the future you're looking. It should not be X percentage of SAM. There has to be real research and real work behind it. Okay, so that's TAM SAM SOM. The SAM, it lowers the risk for the investors because they know that even you're not going to get the whole market, but if you still have a healthy size market for your SAM, then they'll be more interested than if it's a smaller market. Even if you say, okay, well, we can get to 12 million in 3 years, but our SAM is 500 million, they'll say, okay, you're being conservative in what your sales are. We certainly have to grow faster than that. But it's something that's defensible because you can show them how we came to those numbers. And one is research, and the other one is a projection. A mistake that people often make is they would take SOM as like 0.5% of the total addressable market, and that's just wishful thinking. That does not show deep thought and research about the market that you're entering. It's almost as if you're fooling yourself and trying to fool investors at the same time.
Question.
Yes.
So I have gotten what I feel is conflicting information from different advisors as to what SOM represents. So my understanding was that, let's say my financial projections, based on reasonable targets, reasonable assumptions, I should say, has, just to pull a number out of the air, let's say $100 million in ARR after 6 years. So that's what I thought SOM would be. It would be, $100 million annually at year 6. Some people are saying SOM represents if you saturated the market with your product, what would the total be? And then what you're capturing in a particular time frame is an even smaller subset of that. And it left me really confused as to what I thought SOM was. So
okay, so are you suggesting that SOM should be 100% of something?
Correct.
No, that's
yes.
No.
Yeah, that's what I thought, and that really confused the heck out of me.
Yes, well, you're not going to get 100% of anything.
Right.
I mean, even utilities that are put in place to be monopolies, they don't get 100% because there's always a person who wants to live off the grid. Okay, so getting 100% of anything is not possible.
Right. So SAM would be your 100% saturation, right? And SOM would be what your business model allows you to capture in a specific amount of time.
Even SAM, yes, SAM is a research number. And so it is about a specific market or a specific geography. And that's what the current spend is. It's also good when you're doing your research to discover what the compound annual growth rate pattern is in your industry. Because if you looked at AI now, it's through the roof. If you looked at Kleenex and tissues, maybe it's 1 or 2%, right? So if you're in a growing industry, you get more grace, they're more interested in what you're doing. But that SAM is going to be a research refined number from the TAM. SOM is the one that you need to work to find. Some people you'll see on the internet say, okay, well, you need to do a bottom-up analysis. And so the fallacy here is that people figure, okay, there's 50,000 people that do this, and my product costs this much, so the price is going to be this much. And so they're taking that and multiplying it and going all the way up to the top. And that's also a fantasy, because we want to know what the current spend is. What are people actually spending in your market? So I don't like either one of those. I don't like ones where they've done the research on TAM and SAM and they say, oh, we're going to get 1% of it. That's false. And the ones who then say, okay, well, if I'm going to do a bottom-up analysis, I'm going to take it all the way to the top. And so I'm going to say what 100% of the United States is this much, and then 100% of the world is this much. That's just fallacy. So it's this combination of doing it with research for yours and library database research for TAM and SAM. Does that help?
Yes, I think I agree with you. Someone else got me really confused.
And that's possible. There's a lot of conflicting information out there. The thing to think about, like for all of this that you listen to from anybody, is if I put myself in the place of an investor, am I gaining credibility with the way I do my analysis? Or am I losing credibility? So even if your numbers are a little bit weird, but you're able to explain how you got there and it makes sense, then you're gaining credibility. They can think that you're wrong, and that's fine. And then you can have a discussion about it. But if you're able to take them step by step by step how you got to your market, you'll see one later where they took this market plus this market plus this market to come to their TAM. So it makes sense to do it that way if you're going to have products, and this was a consumer package good. If you're going to have products that hit different segments of the market, then if you can do the research and know what those segments are, then you can build a picture of what the TAM is, and then what the SAM, and then your projections still should be some.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. So these are some famous investors, guy like Kawasaki, David. So can you guys, I'm sharing a slide so you can see them, right?
Yes.
Okay. So market is important to all of them. It's down here for Guy, it's up here for Dave, in here. It's something that they want to hear about fairly early on. Alan wants to hear about it first, wants to know what you're talking about. And then Sylvia is down here, kind of in the middle. So notice financials, kind of, well, anyway, market is important, and that's why I say it's one of the most important slides in your deck. For me, the market slide can show a deep understanding of the market, and then the business model really needs to explain what their business is. But we'll get to that when we're doing each test. So those two things have to be right and kind of well thought out, or else I'm rejecting a deck and saying you have to fix these things before we'll put you in the pipeline.
Maggie, can you talk about why the market size is so important for an investor?
They need to know that you have the opportunity to grow your business. So I have a friend who was in the incubator a while ago, and she makes skis and snowboards for high performance women. So first of all, it's for women, right? You've knocked out half the population. If you look at the people who ski and ride, that probably skews more towards men to begin with. And then it's not for the casual skier or rider, it's for a shredder. And so she has great products, they're beautiful, but her market size is so small that the only people who will invest in her are the people who have an interest in seeing her succeed and being able to buy a new pair of skis from her every 2 years. So the market is too small for investor interest. So that's why market size is important.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, where are you going to find this sort of information? And you can start on the internet. That is the best place to start, because if you can hone your questions, it's like AI prompts, right? The better the question, the better the prompt, the better the data you get back. And if you can ask Google a very specific question about the market that you're going after, then you can get resources. Now, you may not be able to read everything that returns from Google, but if you can find the source, at the end, I give you the research librarian at UNLV. If you can copy down the source URL, he may be able to give you the entire. Okay, so it's a great place to start. Other places like the World Bank and CIA World Factbook, they will give you basic information, especially if you're trying to look at, okay, well, what is the size of X sold in Ukraine? Okay, it may have more than a local database. But the big ones are Statista, does really good research. They do their own research. They also make reference to some other articles. IBIS World does a lot of research. And for apps, there's App Annie, and there's another one, the business of apps. So there are resources for all sorts of different businesses. The bottom up here, you start with your first market, try to figure out if you can drill down. There's a database called BizMiner. And the reason I say we're going to refer you to UNLV is because these databases cost money. And they cost more money than most people can afford. We happen to have a grant that enabled us to buy a year of Statista, and it's like $11,000. And that's probably a month. So it's out of reach for the average business owner to be able to do research like that. But because UNLV and UNR are land grant institutions, they have to help the public in exchange for being granted land. And so they are there to help you. Now, not everybody is as cool with helping you as my guy Patrick is. So Patrick's the one you should go to. And always, always ask about dollars and spend, not the number of people that are doing things. That's not of interest. It can be anecdotally interesting, but it's not really like, we want to understand the size of the market. How do you make money? Okay, and then the big corporations may hire Gartner and Forrester to do actual research on a specific market, and they'll pay a ton of money for that, more than a database, $25,000 to $50,000. So that's not something you need to get involved in unless you find an article that's perfect for you and you know somebody who might have it. Then it's great. All right, so we're going to go through a couple of examples. Uber is a great example because of their explosive growth. This is not a commentary on their company style or their behavior. Okay? They're just an example. When they started in 2007, they called out the transportation market as the total addressable market. But of course, that includes rail freight, ocean freight, all kinds of freight. Okay, so back then it was 5.7 trillion. And for them, they whittled it down to taxi and limousine services. And that was in the United States, and it was 4.2 billion back there in 2007. And then for some, they made a best case, a worst case, and a realistic case. This was their first pitch to investors. So their worst case, well, let's start with the best. They could be a market leader and make $1 billion. yearly. Realistically, they were hoping to get 5% of the top 5 cities. Now, 5% is a very arbitrary amount, right? But it's specific to 5 cities. So they did their research to find out which were the cities that had the most taxi cab rides in them. And that's where they wanted to compete. They started in San Francisco, where at rush hour it was impossible to find a cab. And it's a decent show that talks about Uber's history. I think it's not, could be that. I don't know. You guys can look it up. Google knows. And in the worst case, they would remain a 10-car, 100-client service in San Francisco. And if that worked out, they would be able to expand to do the same thing in New York City. But this is how they presented it. So 1 billion in 5 years. That's what they were hoping for. So Uber revenue in 2023, I looked it up just for this presentation, was 37.2 billion, and their current valuation is 168 billion. So they far exceeded their 1 billion per year. And but then they've added these other features: Uber Eats, X. They've added freight. In some cities, they have scooters and things like that. So 5.7 trillion is quite a large market. 4.2 billion, still a good sized market, right? So it's something like when you present to the investors, if they can readily identify with the pain that you're trying to solve, that's almost the first hook that you need. And then having a good market size is great.
Is there a reason why you would include like sea, air, other forms of transportation?
Well, I was just explaining how they did it. So if you fell from Mars and you didn't understand anything about the world markets, in another workbook I use the S&P 500 segments, their sectors. So that gives you kind of a start of where to dive in. And so all of transportation would include all of those other things. So, it's moving things around. There's nothing that really prevents Uber from having traghettos in Venice, right? They could start Uber traghetto there, which is the sea taxi. They move you from one side of the canal or back to another. So that's why they include everything, because they could possibly expand into those areas.
Thank you.
All right, so here is an Airbnb example. Notice that I picked just really large examples, but also examples where we can see what they did when they first approached investors. So a lot of other companies that might be more appealing, they may have lost that data, but Uber and Airbnb is trying to do that. Okay, so Airbnb really started in San Francisco. A bunch of guys lived near Moscone Center, south of the market, and they knew how impossible it was to find a hotel room, how bad traffic was, how congested it was when there was a convention on. So they thought, oh, okay, well maybe like we're young dudes, we go sleep on somebody's mattress in a spare room or in part of the living room. We would be willing to do that. So that's kind of how they thought of it. It actually was on an air mattress, and they didn't breakfast anymore. So they had Airbnb. So they knew that the people who stayed at the Four Seasons were not likely to be the people who would sleep on an air mattress in the corner of the living room. So as they were doing their market research, instead of taking all of travel, they started with budget travelers. Actually, they did start with trips booked worldwide. Then they looked at the budget and online trips because they were only going to be an app. And so they got to 532 million. These are numbers, these are not dollars. And the number of trips with Airbnb. So they figured they could get that amount. I don't know how they arrived, but that's what they came up with. And it seems reasonable. It's not 10%, it's a fifth of it, 10%, 2%? Yeah, it's about 2%. Okay, so that was trips. Those were units. That was not the income that they would make. So down here, they take the number of trips they thought they would have, and then they post their average fee. So they were going to make $20 on an average 3-night stay. That's the average for a convention. And they were charging $70 a night. So their percentage would give them $20 for that trip. And so that number of trips times $20, and it gives you $200 million in revenue between 2008 and 2011. So here you have your time frame, your time bound period of 3 years, and they think they can get to 200 million. What's not to like? The investors that they were presenting to probably were not going to be people who would stay at Airbnb if it was just an air mattress, but you can see how they've evolved. You know, they're doing whole house, they're doing luxury, they're all over the world, and their current market cap is 85.75 billion. So quite a big difference than several years ago. Here is a smaller scale example. And I don't think these guys exist anymore. So they were a couple of guys who were big sports fans, and they were in New York, and they thought that it would be fun and that they would be able to provide a service of giving player jerseys to a fan for a season and charging for that. So they would send it out. The person would keep it all season long, and then they would ship it back, and they could recycle it for the next season. So that was their premise, but they wanted to test it. And so they did research, and they discovered the 5 major sports in the US. So 150 million Americans watch the 5 sports. They wanted to start in New York. And so from 150 million, 11 million are in the New York metro area. And then they went to Yankee Stadium because it was summertime. And they did customer discovery. They talked to people who were there, who looked like big fans. Maybe some of them were wearing jerseys. And they asked them, okay, if I rented you this jersey for a certain amount, less than what it would cost for you to buy it, is that something you would do? And as they were talking to people, what they discovered was it wasn't just the season ticket holders who would rent it. There were people who couldn't afford season tickets, and they would rent it 1 or 2 or 3 times in the season when they were going to games. Another thing that surprised them was that women were just as interested in renting the jersey either for the whole season or once off when they were going to the games. So they changed their thinking around a little bit, and they developed 2 different ways to rent, either for the season or by the game. If your player traded during the season, you could for free send your shirt back and get your second favorite or your new favorite on the team. So getting to Yankee Stadium, they discovered 11.7 of the 11 million people showed a strong interest in renting. And that worked out to 1.3 million people. And half of them wanted to be for the whole season, and half wanted to do it per rent. So this was their market size. And sorry. This is reworked. So using this stacked Venn diagram, circles within circles, is a very easy way to depict TAM SAM SOM. So their TAM was 150 million people in the US, this is people, 11 million New Yorkers, and then 1.3 million that thought they had a good chance of buying. So this is just a redo of this. So far less words, far easier to understand. But this doesn't give you dollars. So now the market potential, we have the 1.3 million customers, 60% we're going to rent one time, and 40% we're going to rent for the season. I know the last slide said 50-50, but it really was 60-40. And the fee, so for the whole season, it's $250, and for a one-time rental, it's $50. So using their numbers, they came up with 39 million for the single time renters, added to 130 million for the season renters, for a total of 169 million in revenue in 3 years. So see how logical that is? See how it's so easy to say, okay, they did this actual research, and then they used their pricing to come up with their song. Song's hard. It can make you cry. It can take you a long time to figure it out. Because if you're going to go for a time period that is, say, 5 years, and you have plans to expand in that 5 years so that you're opening up new markets, new potential customers, you have to plan for that. And so it's a financial exercise, is really what it is. And so if the projection is 3 to 5 years, your first market, absolutely, you're going to focus on that primarily. But if within your 3 to 5 years you plan to expand to another market, then you have to do the analysis all over again, and that's why it's hard. If you're going to the second market, where are you going to do it? You have to do research on that. And when you do that sort of research, you're going to have to ask yourself certain questions. Do I need boots on the ground? Do I actually have to have the people there? How many people do I have to hire? How the hell am I going to hire? Do I need a distribution center? Well, if I put my goods in a distribution center, then I'm only paying for the service. I don't have to hire people. I don't have that headache. How much is advertising going to cost in that market? Yes, you really need to do it. And even though the prices today may not be the prices in 3 years when you get there, at least you will have an idea, a baseline of where it is now. What is the market size for you? How many customers will you have? And then what is the time to the next market? When you go to your third market, you have to ask all the same ones. So to illustrate this, I have taken a riff on a company that's in northern Nevada. It is a company that instead of just delivering food, they're cooking many different types of cuisines, so that if you're with a group of people, you would all be able to get a salad, get Chinese food, get chicken, get these different types of cuisines. They're preparing them all in their kitchen. And they know that the place where you have a lot of these group orders is college. And so their first market, has the university there. They're within a certain distance of the university, so that the delivery charges are not terribly high. And they looked around in the area for other communities that were at least the same size as Reno, which is like 350 in the whole MSA, the Metropolitan Statistical Area. So they were looking for universities, and they wanted to be able to be relatively close to the university, and they were looking at the population in the surrounding area. So if you are in a very rural area where you have a small concentration of homes, but the bulk of the people live out, that was not what they were looking for. So their first research was the cities that have universities. How big is the population? And what does it cost to advertise there? So they ranked, and how many students are at the university? So they ranked these things. And they came up with, like, Missoula had the cheapest ad cost, but it had kind of in the middle towards the end of the population possibilities, and a smaller university. So you may not necessarily go to the number 1, 2, or 3. What you want is a cross-section of these things, of population and a reasonable ad cost. So it looks like Spokane, Salt Lake City, and Tempe are their targets for a second market and possibly a third market. So the next thing they would do is look at what does it cost to distribute. Well, they have to have a kitchen. So in this case, they would have to hire people because they have proprietary recipes for each of the different food brands that they have. So they would have to look at wage rates and electricity costs and all of the things for setting up a business again. And from there, they would probably pick one of these, Tempe, Salt Lake, or Spokane, whichever one had the most advantageous labor costs and availability of the types of people that they needed to hire. And that's why TAM or SOM is hard, is because there's so much that goes into it. But if you do this exercise, if you go through all of this stuff and you're able to come up with a number for SOM, then you will be able to explain it to an investor. You'll gain credibility. All right, so now we have some examples. We'll have 4 examples, and then we'll have 5 examples. So, and these slides come from actual decks that we've received. Usually the good ones, I ask permission to use their slides. The bad ones are usually not in business anymore. So this was a slide. The market information, the total available market in the professional sports industry stands at about $73 billion. Okay, big market. And their company expects to have $7.79 billion in 6 years. I beg to differ. They wanted to create a new sumo wrestling league. And so they should be doing research on how popular is sumo wrestling. They would probably have to start with regular wrestling, Greco-Roman wrestling, find out all the different kinds of wrestling, and try to come up with a reasonable number in through there. Just arbitrarily thinking that you're going to get 10% of the market in 6 years is just not believable. Another sports group. This group wanted to be coaching through videos, through Zooms, where they would have some interaction with the young athletes. And it was a cross-section of hockey, young boy hockey players, and gamers. Because the 2 founders, one was a professional gamer, so great for him, and he's getting paid for the games. And the other one was a high school, maybe even a college hockey player. And so that was his passion. He went on to coach, and they thought that they would be able to reach more people and create a business around coaching online. So their market slide is there's 54 million athletes in the US, and their initial focus is on bantam level male youth hockey players. They didn't tell me how many bantam level male youth hockey players there are. They told me how many youth athletes there are. And then over here, there are 1.8 million gamers interested in competitive play. And that's who they saw as their target customer. They haven't told us what the spend is on hockey or youth sports, which is not even the same thing as the youth players whose parents are willing to pay for one-on-one coaching. That would give them a much better idea of what their market potential was. The gamers, I don't even know if there are coaches in gaming, and this is several years old. So existing networks and gamers have the tools to record the content already since they stream. All right, so it's a market slide, but it doesn't give us much information. Now, this company was a smartphone accessory. It was a case that had a cooling ability. So it sounded like a really cool product. There were other images of it, and it looked cool, it looked interesting. So for their market, they did $224.69 billion in mobile phone accessories. What I liked about this, remember these are getting better now. what I liked about this was that they didn't try to take off on phone sales. It was mobile accessories. So they got that right. And then over here, the phone protection cover market, they now are really honing in on what they're doing. And so that's their SAM, 29.6 billion, still a really large market. And they've got other names in here. But over here for their song, it just looks like they didn't finish. There's no number here. They spelled competitors wrong, and they say that there is an untapped global market for innovating protection cover. So to me, it feels like they just didn't finish, but this was sent out to a potential investor. So the moral of this story is proofread it and have somebody else who doesn't really understand what you do, have them proofread it. Because they'll point out things that don't make sense to them. Maybe you can make them simpler, but at least they should be able to pick up on the spellings. Here's some better examples. All right, this is a gentleman from about Sacramento area, and he wanted to provide mobile barbering and salon services. So he looked at 2019, the amount of US spend. In 2019, it was 69 billion. He thinks it can grow to 107 billion in 2025. That seems like an aggressive growth to me, but I don't know. But it's not unreasonable. So he's got down here worldwide 107 billion. He's going to start in California here. So the US is 34 out of the 107 and 80 million for 3 years in California. And he broke down the barbershops in gray versus the salon spend in red. So that was an interesting slide to me. Very well done.
Question. That SOM looks cumulative rather than annual. Is that a common thing?
Generally, SOM is going to be projected revenue at the top end of your time range.
Right.
Right.
Yeah,
so,
this looks like 2021 through 2024 cumulative is 80 million. Yeah.
So over those 3 years, they will have done 80 million in revenue, not that they're going to be at 80 million.
Oh, I see. This is revenue in billions, not millions. Okay, gotcha. Gotcha. Okay. All right.
I have a question, millions, for sure.
Okay. Thank you.
It didn't seem that unreasonable in California, and if they were expanding a little bit into Las Vegas, capturing the wedding market. So I didn't think that was out of line too much. Next example. This is just an example of, it's not actually a great TAM SAM SOM slide, but it is a great sort of competition slide, talking about all the things that could be competing with you. This fella had, he had a very high-end bed that would move people around if they're locked, and prevented bed sores. So that's why the hospital beds are part of this competition slide. It talks about all different sorts of mattresses and even reclining chairs that people sleep in, and even cervical pillows. So we really looked at everything when it came to competition. The US market is 2 billion for all of the actually 2 billion here, 5.3 billion for the reclining chairs. The reclining chairs are not going to be used as sleep positions for most of that money, so that's one of the suspect. Cervical pillows, yes, that's people who want to get better sleep for sure. US bedding and furniture, 111 million. So that, I believe, should be, it's bigger than these other things, but these other adjustable mattress, bedding mattress would be included in this 111 million. So this company is a Las Vegas-based telemedicine company. They were there, still sort of in the throes of COVID. I don't think we were completely out of COVID in 2021. But they were down to their market size in Las Vegas at 4 million. They started with global telemedicine sales of 55.9 million. Got down to the US market at 6.1 billion, and then they got very local for 40 million in Las Vegas, but I don't know how many years they were projecting. It could be, I would guess about 3. That doesn't seem unreasonable. Questions? Okay, so this is one of my favorite examples. This company is a consumer goods company. They have done extensive research on their customers. They know exactly who they are. They are very appealing to their customers because they're just a little bit outlaw. And so this image, guy wearing the big bandana, and he has a scent thing in his hand. And as the woman who's the CEO tells the story, she talks about what her markets are. She knows that her markets are comprised of people who go to music festivals, the military, and people who ride Harleys. And she says that makes up 8% of Americans, and that is, it was, when she passed, 3 billion businesses, $3 billion market. And this is all of her narration. Total addressable market includes 20 million military members, 17 million REI members, more than 1 million Harley Davidson riders, and 1 million annual festival attendees. In total, our market is 39 million Americans, or 8% of the population. She makes it very easy to understand. And then they talk about all of their markets. Personal care, 1.8 billion, 664 million personal fragrance, and they are planning to go into home fragrance with candles and other scent things for 536 million, and so their total market is 3 billion. And it's just a beautiful story the way that she lays it out. And she also is sneaking in here what her cost per acquisition is. And they are available in foods. So just to review, TAM is the whole big picture. SAM is a more local picture and your specific target market. And then SOM is what you think you can do in revenue in 3 to 5 years. And all of these should be in dollars, unless you're in Mexico or some other country. You can take pictures of this slide. Like I said, we have statistic database. So if you're doing your initial research on Google and you find a statistic article, then John, who works for us, can help you get the whole report. Patrick has many, many more databases available to him. He has IBISWorld, he has BizMiner, he has many of them. We, on the other hand, have Crunchbase and PitchBook well, Crunchbase is not expensive, but PitchBook is wildly expensive. And it's what we use when we start doing due diligence on companies to find out who their competitors are. It's kind of funny, founders in this area will say, oh, I have this great idea, and they'll think they're the only one with the idea because they're kind of looking around locally to see who's doing it. If you really want to find out who else is doing stuff, PitchBook will humble you with how many other companies have already received investment and are working on the very same idea. If you truly have something unique and you're taking IP from the university and trying to commercialize it, that's great. but there could be other solutions that get to the same endpoint without using that IP, and you could have a competitor and not know it. So TAM SAM SOM is important for the founder to understand. The gal who has the Outlaw Soaps company, she does extensive research. She said, I wanted to make sure that I was entering a market where I could have an exit, where I could build the brands, because that's what I do, I build brands. If I could build the brand to a certain size, there would be several companies that would want to take me out. That's how you have to look at it, because you're going to be dedicating years to this company, and it's going to affect your family. They're on the same journey as you. They have a different perspective of the journey than you do, but they're on the journey with you. And so if your idea is to get to an exit, is to have somebody acquire you, then it's worth your time to do the research, to understand how big your market is and whether you're going to have a lifestyle business and you want to serve the best Swedish pancakes in Las Vegas. That's great. It's a lifestyle business. You may be able to hire your kids, they get into high school, you can pay them an outrageous wage, they can save for college, and that's one way to do business. But if you're thinking of a scalable business, it's really important to do this sort of research. Okay, any questions?
Yes. So are you saying we can send an email to John, and if we want to get pitch book information about one or more specific companies?
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you.
That's
Awesome.
very valuable in itself. Pitchbook is $27,000 a year.
Yep. Oh, yes.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Maggie, I got a question. Sorry but can you go back to the intellectual property, like Terrace? Like, how does typically one go about, I guess, looking into like the engineering library? Or what exactly, like, what details come with that, like the engineering library?
Okay, so Patrick is the UNLV patents librarian. So
Mm-hmm.
he can look up patents for you. So if you think that there is a possible competitor, then he can look that up. It's very difficult, though, to do searches for IP unless you have the patent number to
Mm-hmm.
read all about it. It's hard to know what people are working on where they've got visual patents and they're not published yet, and you can't really know what's out there. But Tara is the IP-related librarian up in UNR, and Patrick is the business librarian. He also has the IP stuff. For if you're trying to do IP research, Google patents is pretty good, and the USPTO, the US Patent and Trademark Office, has really upgraded their search engine. So it's much easier to search on a person's name and see what patents they're associated with. And if they have a name like Smith, it's going to be hard. You should have a first name and a last name. But if they have a challenging name, then it's easier to find the stuff that they have worked on. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah.
Okay, good. There's no reason not to write to them and just try to develop a relationship so that they are interested in helping you. Tara's not as nice as Patrick. And then with Patrick, the better, like the AI prompts, right? The better the question, the more specific it is, the better the data you're going to get at.
And then, sorry, for John, it's just kind of one of the main ways to use them is just to get a better idea with understanding the competitors. And
Yeah,
and
he has and Crunchbase, but we also have Statista. So if the research that Google throws back at you mentions a Statista article, John can help with that, but so can Patrick.
okay, cool. Yeah, because I've reached out to Patrick, and I know for my specific thing, he
If somebody else is not moving. Okay.
So yeah, now I've reached out to Patrick before, and he's been helpful. He's been for some of what I'm looking into, a little bit limited on information. Um, and I just wanted to see if if John potentially might have other resources that I might be able to tap into to read a couple of like studies.
Oh, you can try. Studies. JP, yours is an app also, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, so we don't have access to app Andy or the business of apps, but Patrick might. Did you ask him specifically to do app research?
Yeah, no, it was more of like I wanted to do more market research um, in regards to sports, athletics, tech, youth, also just the youth market in general and the breakdown of it. I got a case study from Patrick, which was a great starting point, but it was a little, I want to say it was like 3 years ago or 4 years ago of when the case study was. So I wanted to see if there was something a little bit more recent, but that was like the only thing he had on him. So I mean, it was a good starting point, but oh yeah,
Yeah,
just curious if John might have some.
the only thing that he would have is like Crunchbase, which Patrick does not have. And
Yeah.
statistically, Patrick does that. But
Okay.
also, you have to consider that a lot of sports didn't happen in 2021.
Yep.
So the research should be coming out about now, about 2 years after we've been back playing sports. There should be some newer research, I think.
Definitely. Okay, cool. Thank you. Also want to say hi. Hi, Ron.
Hi.
For hopefully he remembers me. Yeah.
All right, anybody else? Great. Okay, so we're gonna move on to pitch decks now. And now that I see this on the screen, I think my Lightroom font is probably great. All right, so when you are preparing a pitch deck for investors, and this is specifically about a live pitch, then you want to do certain things, like know your audience. So if you've been asked to present or you get the opportunity to present, it is important to understand who is in the audience. Are they investors or are they possible consumers? One of the things you have to concern yourself with if you are actively raising funds is that you cannot make a general solicitation of people in a large setting. It violates SEC rules. So if you know that everybody in your audience is an accredited investor, then you can talk specifics about your deal. If you're not certain, then when it comes to your deal, then you can say that you're raising funds, and if somebody's interested, you can say, I'm raising $2 million. If anybody's interested, come talk to me. And then it's your job when they talk to you to assure yourself that they're accredited investors. Then you can proceed with that conversation. As a founder, you should have a library of decks. A deck that you send out is going to have far more words on it than a deck that you present live. A deck that you present live is to enhance or emphasize what you're saying. When you're presenting live, you're the show. You're the person who is sharing their enthusiasm, who is telling the story, who is making the impression, and the slides should not detract from that. So it's a performance. And that requires a different sort of deck. You should have, you don't even need a deck for a 2-minute spiel, but you should have a 1-minute spiel. You should have a 2-sentence spiel. A 1-minute deck, 1-minute spiel, 2-minute spiel. At 3 minutes, you could probably share 5 slides. and then it goes on from there. So think of it as a library where we're able to add more color and more details with the longer the pitch time is. In general, know your audience. You can cover 6 to 8 topics in about 10 minutes. You can cover 6 to 8 minutes or 8 topics in 5 minutes, but very cursory. And you want to tell a story. The purpose of the pitch is to get the next meeting. That is its purpose. It's not to tell everything about your company. It's just to get the next meeting. And if you get a next meeting, then you're going to bring another deck that's going to go into deeper detail. And if you can ask questions about what they wanted clarification on, then you can tailor that deck to their needs, to the areas where, okay, you hooked them, they're interested in something. If you ask what their areas of concern are, then you can spend more time addressing those concerns. In general, for style, we want to have one idea per slide. We want to use a large font for a live presentation and very few words. If you put a lot of words on a slide, you're asking your audience to read the slide. And people can read faster than you can speak. And so they will read the slide and think, okay, I got the point, and then pull out the and then do research on your class or research on something like who are your competitors. So you want to make sure that you stay the focus of the presentation and the slides are only enhancing or emphasizing. This is what we want to see in a 10-minute pitch deck. It's pretty basic. If we went back to that slide for all of the different investors and the topics that they want to have covered, these are them. They want to understand what is the problem or pain point that you are solving. And this is an excellent time to actually tell the story that hooks them about why you decided that you needed to solve this pain point. The solution, and you don't need to spend a ton of time on the solution. If you have a problem or a pain point that somebody hears and instantly relates to, then you've already got their interest. They should not be paper cut sort of problems. They should be gut-shaped artery problems, or at least fractured bone problems. So problems, the solution, now the market opportunity, and that is to keep them interested in knowing that you're not the only one with this problem. There are lots of people who are spending lots of money on this problem, and you've got a more elegant solution. But this is not. This is how do you sell, who do you sell to, and what do you sell for, and how much are you charging for it? If it's a consumer packaged good, then we probably also want to know what your cost to produce it is versus what we're selling it for. Competition. That helps people to understand how many other people are trying to solve this pain point versus you. And you get the opportunity to tell the investors and the audience how your solution is better than the competition. Traction. You're only going to include traction if you have it, and traction is sales. Traction is nothing else. It's only revenue. It's not the number of sales calls you've had. It's not the number of LOIs you have. It's not the patent surgeons. It's not really traction. It's not the progress and the milestones that you've met. Those are milestones. That is not traction. All right, team. We want to know who is leading the company and why they are the people who can make this company a success. Why them? Why now? And then the ask. The ask is the amount of money that you're looking for, and it should also include the way that you want to have that money. Is it a safe? Is it a convertible note? Is it a priced round? People want to see that on the slide And that shows that this is not your first time out the gate trying to raise money. If you're including the vehicle, any discounts, a valuation cap, then the investor is going to think that at least you know a little bit about raising money. So we're going to take these one by one. And again, this is in a 10-minute pitch framework. The problem. Less is more. You only need to spend 1 minute on this if it is a readily identifiable problem. If it's a truly technical problem, then you would hope that you have people in the audience that are like you and that can grasp the problem that you're solving. And then you can use pictures as a demonstration. Not too many pictures, 1 or 2. And again, it should be kind of easily identifiable as a problem. Here is a bad example. That's what I really like. 1 in 2 people have cancer in their lifetime. Okay, that right there, that's understandable. Genetic testing is the standard of care for diagnosis and treatment. The limitation is under 1% of cancer mutations are known. And the solution is this tool. Don't read slides. Please don't read slides. This has too many words on it. It has this picture, it's supposed to be frightening. And then there's this, which should be part of narration. And absolutely, if you are doing a live pitch, you should have a script. And the script should be different from what's on the slide. It may incorporate, like 1 in 2 people have cancer. That's what you want to emphasize. So that can be on the slide, but your script should fill in with more information, as long as it's not too boring. So I remade that slide. 1 in 2 people will get cancer. Wouldn't you like to know what kind in advance? So it's very simple, it's not very attractive, but it's easily understandable, and it gives the fellow the time to leave this on the slide and say, this array that we've created can do X and Y, and it does it this way. And we're able to test for specific markers. And then you've got these 1 in 2 people having cancer up on the slide. Now, I love this. I love this problem slide. Let me tell you what the solution is. So overheating is a real problem. So we've got an example that you understand, and then over here you understand the target area that he's talking about. So he had a donut type thing that would blow cold air and keep your nether regions cooler. The solution. You can spend a little bit more time on this. I can't tell you how many times I've watched a pitch and it's done by the engineer founder of a company, and he spends 5 out of 10 minutes talking about the solution, losing everybody in the process and not getting to the information that we're most interested in, which is market, business model, team, and their ask. So they often don't make it in time. So you can spend up to 2 minutes on this. If you have a solution, I say don't use screenshots. Screenshots are hard to read, they're distracting, and you're better off just standing up and saying how your software works. They can imagine, they have enough apps on their phone to imagine what it might look like. Use pictures if you have them, but not screenshots. And then tell us how your solution is 10 times better than everything else that's out there. Here is a poor example. It's a poor example because not only does it have a screenshot, it's got little tiny text in here, and it's got a picture of the kids, and then it's in a font with lots and lots of words that are very hard to read, and there are all of these acronyms in here. You should avoid using acronyms on your slides. You're just better off stating what those things mean. So people would get really bored, I think, reading this. He'd just be better off. There's a shortage of childcare options for people who are on military bases. And we have the ability to go pick them up and take them to daycare. And the entire time that your child is in our care, there is a camera on them. You can check in and see your child. You can text and send messages to your babies. That would be a much more succinct way to convey what the solution is than this. Here's one that I like. This is a company that FundNV invested in. It's the all-day adventure class. Again, this is a founder who was so into his product. He created it because he and his wife would go camping and hiking all over Patagonia, and they were mountain bikers. And they couldn't get decent coffee in South America. And so they wanted to be able to create a pour-over so that they could make their own coffee. They also wanted to be able to enjoy cocktail now and so they created this thermal core. So in this solution slide, you can talk about all the different aspects of the product because he's blown them out and he has good little descriptions here. He has a nice background that shows an elevation gradient. I can't remember what that's called. But he's got Denali, Everest, Kilimanjaro, a bunch of different peaks. Probably he has climbed all of them. Well, I don't know that. But anyway, it's on trend with his product. He's Tahoe based and he's built a travel and so is his all-day adventure class. I think we see him again on the competition slide. Well, we see him again. Now your market slide, I just did the whole presentation on it. But when it's included in the pitch deck, it tells you to spend only 1 minute and do not do 1/10 of 1% or whatever of your TAM and SAM. Actually do research. And we want you to include your major markets, not secondary markets, but if you have time, you can include on a separate slide market size for other markets that you intend to go into. There was a company that made a protective sealant, and their first market was going to be aviation because it made the planes last cleaner longer. But they had other secondary markets that they could go into, and they were also large markets. So they went with the largest market first, where they already had contacts, where it would be easy for them to get appointments with people who could buy. And then they had a second slide with these other markets that were also sort of chemically necessary, and they could focus on them in 3 years, 5 years, whatever. Do we have any questions so far? Are you still with me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. It's time to be here.
Yes.
Still here.
Yes, still here.
Still here.
Crushing it. Crushing it, man.
Okay, thank you. All right, here is a slide that the company made it easy for healthcare people that were in homes, like long-term care homes, to communicate about the loved one who was there with the family who was not there. And it automated many things. In addition to that, it made it easier for them to keep track of their records because many of the home care facilities are not super modern. A lot of them are independent and they don't have a software package to enable them to communicate easily with their families of the people that are their patients. So this is a very busy slide. It's just, there's so much information here. It's hard to know where to look. I'm not sure that this graph is necessary. It's absolutely not necessary. Right? He's just trying to point that more and more people are getting older. Instead of saying 10,000 per day, he also says this over here. 10,000 baby boomers per day are turning 65. And half of them are going to need long-term care. And the number of beds that they're going to need is projected to go from 2.7 million in 2020 to 5 million in 2030. So it's a growing market. There is a real need for things that are going to help long-term care facilities. So I remade this slide, and I would change the background. I really don't care for it. But the important part was 10,000 per day turning 65, 52% are going to need long-term care, and then this, which shows that the market is growing. This company, this is my fault. I didn't check to make sure that you get some right pointing. I'm pointing at the SAM where it says achievable and it's messed up. That's not. So this company was creating a way to track construction projects, and their sweet spot were large contractors and contractors with 20+ employees. There are 150,000 of those versus the super large contractors, which there are 15,500 of. So he thinks it is an attainable market for 21 large contractors and almost 4,000 of the 20+ employees. So he calculated out what his market was and came up with 45 million obtainable in a certain period of time. I do like when they actually put the time frame on the slide, so I don't have to guess. And it may have been in his narration. It's so long ago. Here we come to the business model. This is where we learn what you're selling, how you're making money, how are you selling it, through what channels. Are you going direct to consumer? Are you software as a service? And is it software as a service to a consumer? Is it business to business? Is it to enterprise? Is it to government? That's the kind of thing that should be included on the business model slide. How are you reaching your target market? If you're going to enterprise, you may be working with a different reseller, somebody who is calling on enterprise companies with other sales, with other software products that may make sense for you to partner. You can spend 1 to 1.5 minutes on this. It is important. And there are usually questions about the business model if you're in a situation where you do get asked questions. So making it clear to start with is a really good idea. Questions on business model? We're going to have examples. Okay, I don't even know if you can see this. This fella had a piece of software where he wanted to be able to get convention hosts to put information on their app and then have it work within the convention space where people could communicate. So his business model, and that shows who his customers are, and the revenue streams were a portion of ticket sales for that trade show and targeted advertising. Everybody thinks that targeted advertising is easy. It's not easy. We did put on Startup Week. Gaining sponsors is the same thing as targeted advertising. And it's really hard, and it takes a long time to gain momentum. And I would suggest if you can find it, what happens is people send this in and they think, oh, their advertising revenue stream is going to be X. And whatever they guess, they're over projecting. Like they could possibly get to advertising revenue in 8, 7, 6 years, not likely to be right out of the gate. I don't even count that when they're starting. Somebody have a question? Okay, so not a great business model slide. What do we have here? A bunch of words, we've got a chart, we've got that table, and They've got models, so they've got more than one. They're targeting small business owners like car dealerships, resellers, etc. for their primary customers. That does not sound well defined to me. Their service is going to encompass all other services of selling reused items. They wouldn't be our direct competitors since they are more interested in bringing web traffic to their websites. This is all narration, and it's narration that should be edited to be clearer. The primary source of revenue will be coming from the subscription fees. I still don't know who's paying them. $2.99 to $16.99 a month. And they're going to provide an option for posting an ad for 49 cents to those people who don't want to sign up for a subscription. Okay, there's a lot of stuff here. Not good. This is at least clearer. They have two different apps. One is for businesses, one is for individuals. They're going to charge $19 to the individuals, and the businesses $29 a year to $1 million a year. Okay, that is a huge range. It's not believable. Like, who gets to pay $1 million versus $29? Are they going to be selling to a mom and pop shop for $29 a year? Probably. Where are they going to sell for $1 million a year? That sounds like an enterprise sale. Selling into enterprise is completely different from posting on Facebook and selling to individual businesses. This is unrealistic. At least it's easy to understand, but unrealistic. I don't even know if you guys can see this one. This one was a company that made a bench that would lock, and for delivery people, they put your products, so porch fires could seal, into your bench, and they came in different sizes. And so this was pretty clear. The mission is to make the cost of security affordable. So the wholesale was $429 for the large and $549 for the big one. We see it. Oh, thank you, Madeline. I didn't read one online. I see it. Okay, and then the super large $599 retail. I actually can't read this anymore. But it's cost to manufacture because it is a good. The cost of manufacture was $180 to $300, and the prices range from wholesale $429, well $379 to $549 on wholesale, and retail from $499 to $779. So it's not a decent market. I probably missed this one too. Moving on to competition. You shouldn't say that there is none. There is always competition. The status quo is your competition. You've identified a problem and you've gone out and done customer discovery. Some of the questions that you're going to ask are, do you find this to be a problem? How are you solving it now? So if they do find it to be a problem, they're probably figuring out some way to solve it. It may not be elegant, and it may not be practical, and they may just be ignoring it. But there is competition for your product. And that's why customer discovery is important. And by checking in with Crunchbase can help you to learn if there are other people that are tackling the same problem that you are. So you should be thorough in your research and then use your biggest competitors. What you don't want to have happen is somebody in the audience picking up their phone, typing in a quick description of the thing that your thing does, and finding competitors in that search result that you don't have listed. And so this is one of the ways that you should be doing research, and that is to go to Google, go to other search engines, ask ChatGPT, who else is doing this? And then you can compile a list of the competitors, and then you can use a wrap-up that shows your features versus their features. And you always want you to have more features. All of your features are going to be great, and the competitors are going to have so many features. But if you truly have this problem and there's already a solution for it out there, why would you spend your time and your money and your sweat and tears to build a company to solve the problem if there already was a solution? So you should be able to explain why your solution is better than others. If you're doing a price comparison, you should do it before every pitch, just to make sure that you have the most common or the most current information. It's just like for Uber and Airbnb. I failed to do it last week when I presented it, but every time before you do the presentation, you should check on those things so that you are correct. One of the ways to, and we'll see this here, one of the ways to get around that is instead of actually putting prices, if you put just a dollar sign that represents, okay, a dollar sign is cheaper than $2 signs versus $3 signs, and then you have kind of a relative comparison, and that you wouldn't have to check quite as often. And you're only going to spend a minute on position. Here is a little roundup. This is a matrix square roundup. Usually you're going to put your company closest to the left or farthest to the right. You're not going to hide yourself in the middle. And one of the other subtle things that you can do is you can make the check marks for yourself larger than the check marks for others. And you don't want to distract with a very busy symbol for the good things that you have and the stuff where people would like. Don't make it too big. Here's a core competitor slide. Who is our competition? Professional sports teams such as the NBA and the NHL. I believe this is actually the same deck as the sumo wrestlers way back in the beginning. College sports leagues such as NCAA division teams. Yep, those are their competitors, but there are more. Right, I just found this slide and stuck it in a different deck. Yeah. I hate this slide. I don't even want to read this slide. Competition and defensibility. There's Facebook, there's Meetup, there's Bumble. So characteristics of them and then their disadvantages, but where's these are your unique advantages. First in the market? Wait, you're first in the market and you're comparing yourself to Facebook, Meetup, and Bumble? I don't think you're first in the market. It seems like you're pretty late to the party. User control on criteria, players, and groups. Nice. Yeah. Not a great slide. All right. Yep. Now we're back to the all-day adventure class from Hi There. He uses the thumbs up. He's got the things that don't match up, smaller and not as heavy, not as easy to see. He's still using his same elevation thing, and he puts himself next to himself, or next to the features. And he tells you that he's got the vacuum insulated thing, he's rugged, he's versatile, he's easy to clean, and he can go into the things that he has that they don't have. They don't have the core operability, they don't have the cold core, they don't have certain features that he has, but instead he's focused on the actual makeup of the class. He puts the price down here, 85, 52, 35, 49. So this is one of the reasons that you would have to check the prices each time, because these can change. And people can check them easily. All right, and last time I did this presentation, somebody actually knew who this company was. They were called Stern way back when they won the Sontag competition of the UNR. And they have changed their name now to Truck House. And they are taking a Tacoma truck bed and building out a camper. But because it's on a Tacoma, It's got a smaller wheelbase and it's lower to the ground. It's not as hard to get into smaller spaces with their truck versus some of these other bigger campers. They have marine grade components and finishes, and their size is good. Their fuel economy is better than the others, other than the Winnebago rental. Notice also that their little check marks for their features are smaller than their check marks here. So this is a very nice example. They're including the pictures just so you can get a scale idea, but then the pricing is wildly different. And so they are a good solution. They've raised their prices since then. Traction, only if you have revenue, spend 1 minute on it. If they are interested in seeing you again, you can go into more financial information in your deck. You're going to show growth month over month or year over year, whatever is appropriate for the length of time you've been in business. And you can tell us about CAC and LTV. The cost to acquire a customer, and you should know what that is. You may not in the early stages because you're gathering information. And the lifetime value. Also, when you're new, it's hard to determine how long people will stay with you. That's their lifetime value. But you should be tracking it from the get-go. And then your customer retention and customer losses culture.
Just to be clear, if you're an early stage company with no revenue, don't even include that slide.
Correct.
Okay. Because I have, people's giving advice about what to put on a traction slide that isn't revenue. And it is a lot of hand waving. So
yeah, it's not really traction. I told you once you do milestones, I wouldn't call it traction. If you have significant milestones, you can include that. To me, people want to tell us about their journey, but they had the idea in 2019. In 2020, they made a paper prototype. In 2023, they made a 3D printed prototype. Okay, that's not even that interesting. So tracking the things. But she had sales here at the Christian period. Say again?
Oh, the way down.
Maggie?
Yeah.
Hey, question. Could you expound upon that a little bit? Like, could you give maybe some examples of what would go on in lieu of traction for a pre-revenue company?
Okay.
That would not be a waste of time to see for an investor?
Well, just gonna write a note. Okay. It's 7:10 now. Man, I got long. Holy cow. Examples of what we want to know. I would, if you have tested in the marketplace, if you have done a beta, then that is some sort of proof and validation. So I would you could include that kind of information. I wouldn't call it traction though. I would just call it milestones or our journey or something like that. Okay, so now I feel I need to really talk faster because it's 7:10. I'm sorry, thank you for sticking with me. The team. Only a max of 4 people. I don't care about your advisors. It's scientists who think that having great advisors is somehow helpful. And it's probably because they need advisors. But some people have put advisors on their slides that they talk to once. And that's not an advisor. So I don't trust the whole advisors thing. If you actually do have a strong relationship with somebody, then maybe put it in there. But to me, that seems like something that I would need to test. And like I said, I'm pretty skeptical. Show pictures of your teammates, and you should answer by us. And it should be too wordy. You can cover more in the narration. where you came from, what you've done. You should put your role in there. And you should include, you should be bullet points that give validity to the people as founders who can get this job. And we often like to see logos because they don't take up as much space as us do. And you're not going to spend a ton of time on this unless you've had an exit before. And if you've had an exit before, a lot of times we'll see the team slide way in the early part of the deck, establishing credibility because the founder has been through it before. All right, so this is the bad example. Here's the, well, she put her name here, and she put a name here. And then she included their tech people. So they're just an outsourced tech person. And they put their business model on the slide too with the team. Remember one idea per slide. These people, I asked them twice to put last names in there, and I can only assume that they're currently working for companies and they are working on this as a side business, and that's why they're not willing to talk about where they're working. He's done projects at major global companies like Apple and Philips. And so it was just a little kind of sneaky. But if you're pitching to investors, at some point, you're going to have to be honest with them about what you're doing. And most investors will not invest in founders who are not working in their business full time. Right? I love this team slide. These look like really approachable guys. Ellie, he is a PhD in mechanical engineering, former senior engineer at Caterpillar, and specialized in airflow and fan acoustics. This company is called Snooze, and they make sound machines for falling asleep. And Matt over here, he's in Vegas. He's got a background in marketing. He was a marketing director at Zappos, and he's definitely not a doctor. And so there's a little bit of whimsy in here. We've got the salient points. I love this slide. For your ask, again, know your audience, know where you can put it and ask out there in any sort of detail. If not, you should just say, I'm raising funds this much money. Come talk to me. If you know that all of your audience are accredited investors, then some people like to see the ask up front and they can frame the rest of the presentation for what they're asking for. On the other hand, I like it at the end to kind of build up momentum, say how you're going to save the world, and we're only looking for this much money, and our valuation is reasonable, which it very rarely is. So you don't have to spend a ton of time on this, but you should include your use of funds. A lot of investors are very worried about the use of funds going to pay old debt. They will never go for that. The use of funds going to pay for salaries for people to build an app. They don't usually go for that. In a percentage of salaries versus product work or marketing. If you are having sales, then you're going to put gas on the fire to blow up your sales so that you can return the investors' money faster. All right, so this is, of course, a bad slide. It's got a dollar sign at the end of the day. Blah, 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 blah. Our hope is, by providing an incredible restroom experience combined with said humanitarian efforts. There's certain words I never want to see on a pitch deck, and that kind of mumbo jumbo financial doesn't work for me. They're looking for $400,000, and that will cover all expenses for initial startup. That's so reassuring. We don't know what the vehicle is. There's a lot of information missing from this side. Funding. At least this is easy to understand, right? 275K, that's what they're looking for. 245 for salary. Okay, whoops. That's not good. 20,000 for marketing, 5,000 for employee benefits, and 5,000 for the hours. So 250,000 is really for the employees, and then 20,000 is for marketing. That's probably not enough. This guy was a scientist, so a very good depiction of his focus. And he's looking for 300,000 to start continuing to sell this device in Nevada and all the other states. So that's not a very clear description of what the vehicle is or what the use of funds is. Hopefully we're getting to a better one. All right, seeking 500K for 12%, they're doing equity or preferred stock. They have an exit strategy. I don't think this needs to be on the slide, but something that should be in narration. And then this is hard to see. It's really hard to see. The colors are all too close. The writing is too small. And you also have to demonstrate, like, okay, this yellow, that's inventory, this orange. And I've got 3 different blues to deal with. I don't know. So I remade that slide to make it easier to understand. All right, I changed the colors. Anyway, that's product development. This is staffing. This is operating capital. It's broken out, and you can see what it is.
Maggie, we're losing you. You're going in and out.
You're not hearing me? Okay. I'm sorry. Is that better?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so now I am not just looking at the slide, I am facing the microphone. See it like that. Sorry. This is not a great slide. It's got a lot of words. And to me, like right off the bat, these bullet points under marketing and sales can be part of the story, not part of the slide. Same deal under these bullet points and content creation. So I probably remade this one. Up there we go. The target is 600K. We've got 400K committed for the use of funds. 70% is going to marketing and sales, and 30% is going to technology and enhancements. And we have an exit strategy. Like, this is all the important stuff that tell us what the vehicle is, but it's much easier to understand. Your last slide is actually the most important slide in your deck because it gives the audience a way to get in touch with you. So it should have your logo, your company contact, a thank you, and if you need to, you can repeat your ask on the platform. Some more thoughts on style. They should be large fonts. They should be sans serif fonts. So the serifs are little tails on things and they look fancy. They're harder to read. So you should use a sans serif, very clean font. You should have minimal background elements. A lot of people will think it's clean that they find on Canva or some other place, and it can just be distracting. If you are a marketing company, you've got a marketing app, it should be slicker than an engineer's app, right? You should be able to demonstrate your expertise in your field with your deck. And it's the first deck you've ever made. I've seen people spend a lot of money on having professional slides made, and yet they don't have the information on them that they should have. So if you're going to pay for somebody to do a deck, you make sure that the critical information is on the slides, and then you make it. You should have your logo on your slide. Animations are distraction. Page numbers, committee are distraction. Some investors like them because they'll write down the page number and say, can you go back to that page? Me, I would just say, can you go back to your business slide? Can you go back to your market slide? Video will often fail. And it's actually not video. The playing of the video will usually happen. It's the sound that goes with the video that will 90% of the time fail. So that's why you should include it if you want video to show, to demonstrate something, and you really want it, I would just do it without sound. and you can talk over the video. One idea per slide, very simple charts if you're using them, and no more than 2 photos per slide, unless the whole slide is a montage. And there we go, that's my last slide. Thank you. Questions? Okay.
Good job, Maggie.
Yes, go ahead. Is there a comment or question? Okay, everybody should have this book by next week. We're going to talk about some of the information in here. There is an exercise in here which we don't expect you to understand when you come to class. It's kind of dense. It's not really a fun read, but if you read it and reread it, you will be smarter than your lawyer and venture capitalist. So we're going to dig into due diligence in the coming weeks. We've divided our actual due diligence questionnaire into different segments. Thank you, Madeline, for putting that there. And we will have somebody talk about the different segments. So we'll have somebody who's a financial geek during that day, somebody who's a marketing and salesperson during that day. And next week we're having Craig Macy, who is going to take some stuff from the book and also go over deal terms and terminology. And you should understand those. If you're going to go out for investment, you should understand the perspective of the investor and understand the things that you need to protect for yourself. You don't want to find yourself in the situation in an A round where you have so little percentage of the company that you dread going to work each day. So you have to protect yourself. And if any of you guys gets a term sheet and you're uncertain about it, we are happy to look it over and tell you the parts that you should ask more about or that we find are just egregious. And then you can renegotiate. So any questions?
If I may, I had the second edition of Venture Deals. So I ordered the 4th edition. So I'd have the current one for the class, and I can confirm, tell everyone, read that book cover to cover. If you are raising money for your startup and you're talking to professional investors, you need to read that book cover to cover about 4 or 5 times. Trust me.
Thank you. Is that all?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, John.
Hi, Maggie.
For the exercise, so I actually bought the audiobook for myself, and oddly enough, yeah, I already started it today. And the forward, they had 4 or 5 different people that said the same thing as Ron. It's like, you gotta have the book, man. I wish I had the book. But for the exercise, since I do have the audiobook, and honestly, a lot of times, like, audiobooks is the way I absorb information. For the exercise, since it sounds like you have the experience of going through the book already, is the exercise something that sometimes they'll show like a PDF or something along the lines, or it would easily be something like I could listen to and just jot down?
I understand what you're asking. It's like, is there a worksheet that goes with it? I don't know
Or
what is going to.
yeah, I'm sorry, to clarify the question, for the exercise that you mentioned earlier, is that something that has like an image attached to it or something like that, just so that, like, for the audiobook, they might just say, hey, go to the website PDF or whatever version. So I was just curious if it has something like that.
I will try to find out, and if it's contains a little thing within the book and it has a page reference or a chapter reference, I will send that to you guys before next Tuesday. If there is, or even if I can make a worksheet that takes all the salient points and then we're going to play with the numbers, I'll send that to you too.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, well, I have taken 2 hours of your time. and I apologize for that.
Well, thank you so much. Seriously.
Yeah, well worth it, Maggie.
Yeah,
Definitely.
agreed.
Oh, thank you. Yes. Okay. If you guys have any questions about what we covered tonight, just send them to me. My email's right there on StartUpNV.org, and I'm happy to answer them. And if you feel like I glossed over something, I can probably just refresh it next week before break starts. Okay, that'll do it.